The following program does not necessarily reflect the opinions and viewpoints of the staff and management of the station.
Welcome to the wonderful world of seniors, the best of all worlds. You now have the time, resources, and ability to enjoy what you have worked for all your life. So let's explore the many possibilities available to seniors on Senior World Radio. Senior World Radio is your source for senior citizens-related topics, information, and entertainment. Now, here is your host of Senior World Radio, Glenn Howard.
Oklahoma City was founded on April the 22nd, 1889. The land known as Indian Territory was open for settlement in the Land Run, with some 10,000 homesteaders settling in this area and calling it Oklahoma City. By 1900, that population had doubled. And on the very first Sunday after the land run, some hardy pioneers established a church down on the corner of what is now 4th and Robinson. And that church continues to this day as an effective ministry in Oklahoma City. My guest today is the historian for First Church, Mr. Bill Mullins, an 83-year-old kid who loves his church and knows its history, and I am so honored to have Bill here in the studio with me. Bill, welcome. So glad you came in to visit with me.
Thank you, sir.
It's always good to have you, and I know here a few years ago when I had a chance to visit with you and talk about First Church, it wasn't originally called First Church. What was the original name when the church was founded?
First Church, actually, on the 28th of April, all the Methodists met just a block from where we are now located at 4th and Robinson.
Uh-huh.
And out of that came two churches.
Okay.
That being the Methodist Episcopal Church and the Methodist Episcopal Church South.
Methodist Episcopal Church and Methodist Episcopal Church South. So which one was First Church?
First Church was the Methodist Episcopal, and the South Church had split off in the 1840s.
Uh-huh.
And we, of course, all of them met together that first Sunday because there was no designation of denominations. And from that, two churches in Oklahoma City that are still present came into being. And First Church was one of the first ones.
Okay, and the other one was what is now known as
St. Luke's
Methodist.
Yes.
Two large downtown churches.
Right.
Continue now for over 100 years.
125 years. In fact, some of the early leaders of First Church were the postmaster, Mr. Beidler. I can't remember his first name. And he provided space in what was being built as the post office for our first services after that first Sunday.
So now your first services were actually in the post office.
No, the first services were actually in the post office. And then that second Sunday after that, on May the 5th, First Church started a Sunday school class. It was probably the first, if not the first, near the first, Sunday school classes in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
And another important man in the congregation was Dr. D.W. Scott. Dr. Scott was a pharmacist, but at one time he had been a part-time preacher when he came here, but he devoted himself to the drug business as a druggist.
Right.
But he had a great insight for Oklahoma City. And he went out to the edge of the city at what is now 4th and Robinson. And
out in the country in those days.
It was near the country. I have a map that was sketched from 1890 that shows that there were only two blocks north of 5th Street. So we did actually go to the edge of the city to buy the lots. And Mr. Scott put down $500 to hold the property until we could raise the money for that property.
Wow. What was it in 1889 when the land run took place? What was downtown Oklahoma City like? Were there very many buildings? What?
There were no buildings. It went from a population of 0 to about 10,000 from noon to nightfall.
Literally in one day.
Yeah, well, literally in half a day.
Yeah.
And
So what, a kind of a tent city?
I think that was, from my understanding, that was, now, contrary to belief, I was not there.
Oh, yeah. When they started, though, talking about the idea of a church, first of all, I think it's very significant to recognize that the pioneers, the early fathers, were people who were very committed to their faith, very committed to their God. They almost felt like that their coming west was a calling to come into this no man's land and to establish it, and primarily as an act of obedience to divine direction, was it not?
Yes, and they began to gather together immediately, and as I say, the two separate denominations split almost immediately, as you would expect. Right. Now, First Methodist Episcopal Church was actually chartered on June the 23rd, 1889, which is only about 2 months after the run.
Right.
In August of that year, they met and decided, that's when they actually purchased their lots, and they decided almost immediately to begin building a building. And by October the 27th, 1889, just 2 months later, they had a little frame building on that corner of 4th and Robinson. And just 6 months, almost to the day after the pastor that called the meeting of Methodists together was there. Mm-hmm. So, and from that has grown a church now that has ebbed and flowed.
Right.
At times it's been fairly large, other times a little fairly small.
And a denomination that's ebbed and flowed. And finally,
Yes.
When did they come together, the South and the Methodist Episcopal churches?
Well, they, along with the Methodist Protestant Church, came together in 1939.
Okay.
And then to form the Methodist Church. Now, the Methodist Church merged with the Evangelical Brethren Church in 1968. And that formed what is now known as the United Methodist Church. The Evangelical United Brethren had formed out of two churches that merged in 1946. Both the previous churches had been very closely associated with the Methodist Church. So it wasn't it was not an abnormal union.
A couple of the things that I remember when I was down there, one of them was the Lincoln window. Tell me the story about the Lincoln window.
Well, there are two windows that you almost have to tell the story about.
All right.
There is a rose window in the sanctuary
Mm-hmm.
on the west side, and then the Lincoln window. And both of those were given to the church by the GAR. And that stands for Grand Army of the Republic. Now, the only members of the GAR were Union veterans of the Civil War. So, and First Church being known as the North Church,
right,
it would be the thing that they want to do.
So the Lincoln window then was commemorating, how did it come into existence?
Well, it came into existence because of being in the North.
Okay.
And, of course, Lincoln was basically considered a North president. And
I also remember you had, I think, one of the first organs in any church in the country, did you not?
yes, they had. Well, that need to go on to the fact that the little frame building was removed from that property on Labor Day, 1903.
Okay.
And the next day they began building the first of several large brick churches along Robinson Avenue. And that was dedicated in 1904, on June the 5th of 1904.
Now, this is 2 years before statehood, wasn't it?
Yes, that was 2 years before statehood. And installed in that was a pipe organ, I believe was one of the first, if not the first, west of the Mississippi. And a strange thing happened. The Sunday morning of the dedication, they were going to play that organ. And Mr. Kimball, this was a Kimball organ, and he had helped install it, and he was there for the installation or for the dedication. And it was announced about 2 hours before church time that the city was going to shut down the electricity. So Mr. Kimball got together and then organized and built a way of pumping the reeds by manpower because he wanted to display the beauty of the organ. Now, the pipes in that organ are still in existence and are still being used to this day. The console's been changed a time or two, but that's to be expected.
I'll tell you, that is so interesting, the kind of history, and to realize all of this took place before statehood.
Yes.
And the church has continued on that same location now,
Right.
all the way through. So when they moved the first building, where did they move it to? Did they tear it down?
No, they moved it to western Oklahoma City, became known at one time as the Billy Hooten Memorial Church. Billy Hooten was a son of a pastor. I don't remember what the original name was, but they changed it to Billy Hooten, and he was the son of a pastor at First Church in 1940s, and he had died during World War II. So the name is
memory of him.
Yes. Yes.
I'm Glenn Howard, Senior World Radio, visiting today with Mr. Bill Mullins. Bill is the historian for First Church, I guess the oldest church on its same continuous location since back before statehood, founded just the Sunday after Oklahoma City was founded in 1889. We got to take a break for just a moment, but we're going to be coming right back, so please don't go away.
You're nobody till somebody loves you.
Have you ever had a problem, but it seemed like there was no one who could help? You spent hours calling around, being referred from one place to the next. Well, not anymore. I want to tell you about a free and easy-to-use service in Oklahoma. 211 is a simple 3-digit phone number to get help or to give help when you don't know where to turn. Dialing 211 only takes a minute, and you are connected with a caring Oklahoman who will help you find the assistance you've been looking for. With access to over 13,000 programs, Heartline 211 can connect you to local resources for many different needs, including health care, food, counseling, rent assistance, disability assistance, job services, and much more. 211 is a service of Heartline, a United Way partner agency. 211, the right first call to get help or give help 24 hours a day.
Hi, my name's Jason Ledlow, president of UT Phone, the ultimate telephone service. We're proud to be a sponsor of Senior World Radio with Glenn Howard. UT Phone is dedicated to providing Oklahomans affordable telephone service all across our great state. We have Lifeline Home Phone service starting at just $1.95. That's right, just $1.95, and most of Oklahoma's seniors qualify for this reduced home phone service. They get to keep their old home phone number, and it even includes long distance. Another great feature of UT Phone's customers really like is that it includes repair service. That's right, any repairs at no additional charge. With many telephone services charging $40 to $50 per month, it makes sense to switch your service to UT Phone. This service is a federal program that is provided through the Universal Service Fund. There is only one per household, so make it UT Phone's home phone service for $1.95. Give us a call at 800-996-0098. Again, call 800-996-0098.
I've made up my mind.
Welcome back to Senior World Radio. I'm Glenn Howard, visiting today with Mr. Bill Mullins. Bill is the historian for First Church. Bill's an 83-year-old kid who loves his church and knows its history. And it was so exciting to me a few years ago when I was tending down there to learn about the history of it, how the First Church actually was established in relationship more to the Northern armies. Another church downtown, which now is known as St. Luke's, was more affiliated with the Southern armies. And, of course, the whole denomination came together, I think you said, in 1939.
Yes.
Two major churches with great ministries. And, of course, the story you were telling about the establishment or building of the first organ west of the Mississippi by Mr. Kimball himself. And
yes.
There's still concerts going on in that building. I've heard them, and it is indeed a very beautiful organ. Let me ask you, Bill, how in the world did you get involved? You said you were not around in 1889 when it started. What brought you to First Church, and how did you get involved with it? Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Wetumpka, Oklahoma.
You are a native Okie.
I'm a native Okie.
Okay.
Spent very little time outside of Oklahoma. I had come out of the Army in 1958, and I was returning to work at Tinker Air Force Base.
Okay.
And I was looking for a place to live, or at least hang my hat for the night.
Right.
And I got a room in a rooming house about 2 blocks from First Church. And I went out looking for a Methodist church. And I knew where St. Luke's was, but I didn't have a car. I had to walk wherever we went.
And that was a long ways away in
That
those
was
days.
a long ways away. And I happened to walk down 4th Street to the corner of 4th and Robinson. And there was the church, First Methodist Church, T. Poe Williams, pastor. Now, Poe Williams had been my pastor in 2 other churches, in my hometown of Wetumpka and also in Stillwater when I was in college. So it was a natural draw for me to join that church, or at least start attending there. And I attended there from the fall of 58 until February of 1960, before I ever moved my membership into the church. And of course, at that church is where I met my wife.
And a beautiful woman indeed.
And actually, just about a month after I joined, we were married there. And we have continued there almost 55 years now.
I think the big thing, of course, with First Church, in addition to being the First Church, and I like the idea that you've emphasized that word First Church rather than denomination. Although it is a denominational church, it is First Church. But obviously, the bombing of Oklahoma City, when the Murrah building was bombed, that was directly across the street from First Church, and boy, that made a major impact upon the congregation in that church.
It really did. We were without a place to go because the church was unsafe, for one thing, or at least we thought it was probably unsafe.
Had been declared so.
So in addition, the U.S. Marshals had taken it under their control because it's part of a crime scene.
Okay.
So we had to get permission to even walk into that church to pick up a piece of dust. And but the first Sunday after the bombing, we met at Oklahoma City University in their Fine Arts Auditorium. But that was not a good place to hold a church service. It's a beautiful place for concerts and things like that, but not for church. The following Monday, the pastor at Trinity Baptist Church called our pastor and said, would you like to worship here? He said, I can only give you one Sunday's commitment until the congregation votes. And they voted for us to stay, and we were there for almost 3 years to the day. And we will always be eternally grateful to our Baptist brethren.
So the Methodist Church worshipped in the Baptist facility
Right.
for several years.
3 years.
3 years.
In fact, the last service at First Church was Easter Sunday, April the 12th, April 16th, 1995. I'll get this date correct in a minute. I got too many dates in my head.
I understand.
And the first church in our new sanctuary, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit in just a minute,
Right.
was April 12th, 1998, on Easter Sunday. So the last church in the old sanctuary was Easter Sunday. The first church in the new sanctuary was Easter Sunday.
One of the interesting things that I think you guys have done, you mentioned a while ago the rose window. You did some very creative things with the glass out of the windows that were destroyed in the bombing.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Now, we do have one set of windows that are still 1904 windows. But all the rest of the stained glass windows were destroyed in various forms. Mm-hmm. And somebody had the forethought to pick up that glass, not just sweep it out and throw it away, which is what most people would normally do.
Done, yeah.
But through the years, they have made many things out of that glass. One of them is a small angel about 2 inches high, in which I've had some dealings with that because I've made some of them.
My wife has some of those and wears them proudly. They're made pink.
Well, those were rings, but then they had an angel hanging that I worked on. I worked on a little bit on the other, but my fingers were too big for that small work because it was very small. And I just did not care for that work. But now the other I had fun with.
Yeah.
I still do occasionally. They're still got a little bit of glass, of the original glass, and everything of those are sold are original glass.
Now that the original part of the building, though, that is continued, is what you now call the Harris Hall. I think that was actually. As it was, that was your sanctuary, wasn't it?
That was their sanctuary. It was not the original 1904 sanctuary.
Okay.
It was because in 1917 they expanded the sanctuary 23 feet to the east, and they moved the location of the choir from the south to the east, and all of that was in a balcony. And we had a balcony that completely surrounded the sanctuary. And so
now that building was built or was separated from the other part of the building, was it not? Is there some kind of protection there for it, or what was the deal on that?
Well, now that 17 feet became part of the original building.
Okay.
Then they added an educational building in 1928. Then later they came in and built a north lobby,
okay,
and a covering that you could get out of cars and go in, and they built a new choir room, all in just to the north edge of the original building.
Now the sanctuary then that was built after the bombing took place. A beautiful facility.
Right.
That was what took the 3 years from the time of the bombing until that was completed?
Yes. It took us, and actually it didn't take that long to build it, but thankfully the Methodist Church has things in their system that you have to go through in order to ensure that obligations are not too big for a congregation or a conference to take care of.
And it was quite amazing, I think, the story of how that building was funded, as support came from so many different sources, did it not?
Yes, the support came from all over the world, actually, and we had donations from churches. Also, there was, I can't remember exactly the amount of money that the federal government gave, and I think is the only time the federal government ever gave to a church. But they gave money to rebuild, and that was because of the historic site that it is in. And but it was one that, and when we moved into it, and I say, I'll give you a figure that, not to be bragging, that new sanctuary was estimated value was $4 million, and we moved into it debt-free.
Wow. Having come from the Oklahoma City bombing to be able to move into a building and have it debt-free, Bill, that is incredible.
Of course, we had to borrow money to refurbish the rest of it,
Right.
and we tore down the old education building and built a new one.
And came up with a very lovely sanctuary. In fact, I think out on the corner you still got the prayer chapel outside there that a lot of people, when they're coming to visit the memorial, stop in, and it's a real time of refreshing time of devotion. Bill, this has been incredible. I wish we had another hour to talk about this. I personally, of course, had a few years down there at First Church with you, and remember watching people come in from literally all over the United States and literally from around the world to see the memorial, because the bombing memorial, I think, has been so beautifully built to help make sure we do not forget. And First Church is very much a part of that whole process, and the history of First Church, to be right down in the heart of the city.
Right.
In fact, I saw a monument here the other day over by the Civic Center concerning First Church and reminiscing or talking about its history. But anyway, our time has run out. We've got to go. I'm Glenn Howard, Senior World Radio. Been visiting today with Mr. Bill Mullins. Bill is the historian of First Church, located down on the corner of 4th and Robinson. If you get a chance, drop at the church, meet him, let him show you through it and really tell you the history. You're going to enjoy it. But right now we got to go. Be sure and take care of yourself. Join us again this same time next week. Like everybody you meet, and do something special for somebody, especially yourself. See you this time next week. Bye-bye now.
I'm on the top of the world, looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can